Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Peak Season Podcast. Appreciate you joining us today. Good morning, Tyler. How's it going?
Good, Luke. Thanks for asking. Today we have a little bit of an update, right? And I think it's a pretty big update with Hospitable. So we're going to dive into it and talk about a new integration approval between Hospitable and VRBO.
Yeah, so this is like the biggest thing to hit the STR industry since COVID, man. This is a big deal. So it sounds like Hospitable is going to be fully integrated with OwnerRez now. With VRBO now, which is much more like what OwnerRez is doing. So Tyler, let's go over what the integration or the lack thereof currently looks like with Hospitable and what we're talking about their shortcomings are as far as a connection to a VRBO right now. And then we'll get into what it could be, what it should be, and what it's going to be.
Yeah, sounds good. So super high level, Airbnb, Booking.com, they had really a full API integration, and VRBO was more of a public API. So essentially what that means is there was a lot of manual work for us as as owners and hosts, where we had to go into VRBO directly to do anything we wanted to do, right? If we wanted to update our listing, our photos, if we wanted to communicate to guests, right? That's what I'm dealing with right now. So I have a VRBO guest. I don't get VRBO guests very often, but when I did, I was like, oh, darn it, right? Because now none of my automated communications from Hospitable flow into VRBO. And so I'm setting reminders of all my touch points and having to manually go in and do those.
So it used to be, or at least I haven't been on VRBO in a little bit, mainly because there's so much friction and clunkiness, and I value simplicity above all else.
Yeah.
But it used to be that Hospitable's connection was stable enough to where we're getting good guest comms and all that. We could still use our unified inbox and all that. But I think a lot of the issue was on VRBO's end, where they're constantly changing and they have a very clunky interface, and Hospitable basically couldn't keep up with that connection.
Yeah. And I mean, Hospitable was still doing some stuff like availability, pricing, and calendar restrictions. But even then, like I've noticed recently, I don't know, like I said, you may have not been using it, but I feel like every week I was getting something like, I'd get a booking on Airbnb, and then Hospitable sends me a message and said, hey, issues with your calendar sync on VRBO. And so I'm having to manually go in and update it. I did try the Chrome extension update, which was, I think, really a patch fix, but it's not really working very well.
Okay. Yeah, and that's been really part of the reason why I just got off VRBO altogether. Like, my VRBO journey has been sort of strange. So when I first got into the STR space, I was using Hospitable, and it connected to VRBO, and I was getting some VRBO bookings, and everything was fine. But just every once in a while, just when you started to trust it, it would disconnect. I had a couple times where I got double bookings. So me being the growing operator that I am, decided I was going to go over to OwnerRez because they had a full-on integrated relationship with VRBO. And what a full integration means is that they have their own API connection. Their software has its own way of talking to VRBO. So they basically shake hands and continue shaking hands with VRBO throughout the entire process, right? And what that meant for me was it worked flawlessly. I could change my listing on OwnerRez, and it would push straight to VRBO. Yeah. I was the merchant of record because I was fully integrated. So that meant that when guests booked on VRBO, they went to my Stripe account and checked out, and I got the payment right then. It was very seamless and nice, but it also sort of created other issues. So I'd have to have multiple Stripe accounts. And as we grew, we bring co-host clients on and things like that. They're going to have their own Stripe account, right, which is just another complexity. So long story short, there was complexities with being directly VRBO integrated that I didn't really care for. And I just didn't really care for OwnerRez's system. I didn't feel like the juice was worth the squeeze, because the big reason I went over to OwnerRez was because I wanted to be VRBO integrated. And then at the end of the day, the quality of guests I was getting on VRBO was, I don't want to say they were bad guests, but they were a little bit more needy. A couple times, even through all my automatic communications and all this stuff, I would have people that are calling me the day of their check-in, asking where they can come pick up the key. And I'm like, I messaged you your door code, man, 3 days ago and today. And I would have people doing inquiries where they would ask me 50 questions about the property and then not book it. And then I went back and I did a historical just a deep dive on it. And I said, okay, what VRBO bookings did I get? And were they in times when I wouldn't have just been booked on Airbnb or direct anyway? And I couldn't find any that weren't like just peak season bookings like that. My calendar would not have been empty. So I was like, is it worth the complexity and the headache for me to be on VRBO at this point? And the answer was no. So I gladly just canceled my VRBO account and I went to Hospitable, and I've been just running Hospitable with Airbnb and direct, and I've been happy as can be. But now that Hospitable has launched this integration and it seems like they could seamlessly tie in with VRBO, I am considering going and adding some VRBO listings and seeing how it works, because I think they've removed a lot of that friction. At least their article seems to indicate that they've removed a lot of that friction. And Airbnb simultaneously has cranked up their fees. Yeah. So, I mean, right. So the writing's on the wall. Maybe I need to get back on VRBO. I'm always willing to change and pivot. And if it doesn't add friction to my business, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Luke. And, I guess I've always kind of thought about it because I've thought about it a lot about just getting rid of VRBO because I don't get a ton of bookings, right? When I first started, I would say about 25 to 30% of my revenue was from VRBO. But year 2, 3, 4, and so on, it's been less and less. But I kind of go back to the thought of, at the end of the day, VRBO is still a multi-billion-dollar platform, and there are guests that only use VRBO. So, trying to get a piece of that pie, I guess, is something that I still am hopeful for at some point. And like I said, I mean, I do have a booking that's coming, and it's a decent amount, and it's during a really low season where honestly I'm not getting anything on Airbnb right now for this upcoming month. So it has been helping me, at least in that sense. Let's talk a little bit about what this change does for us as hosts. So again, yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it, but you kind of have now a full listing management. You can sync your photos, your rate and availability can be controlled, hopefully a little bit better without some of those glitches where it's not syncing. And so faster syncing and real operational automation, I think, is a big part of this. Anything else I'm missing, Luke?
Yeah, I think there's just your typical stuff you would expect from any PMS, which is we're syncing messaging, we're syncing pricing, calendar management. I mean, I actually had, back previous to this when I was still on VRBO on Hospitable, I had a guest that was able to double book because something came unhooked, and the VRBO guest was the second to book, and I messaged them and said, hey, like, we accidentally got double booked. I'm really sorry, but like, we're not available during this time. And they said, well, I'm not canceling. And I was like, so I have this choice, like, do I cancel on a guest? And luckily I called VRBO and I said, hey, like, for whatever reason, the automations did not work in this case. I need you to cancel this guest. And I was on the phone for like an hour and a half with them, and eventually they did it. But just the basics are what we really need. But then they went a little bit past that, and these are the things that might entice me to come back. So it sounds like Hospitable is going to be the merchant of record, which means I don't have to have Stripe accounts connected, which is huge. So they're going to charge slightly more than Stripe would. So Stripe charges 3%, and I think they're going to be at like 3.9, right?
3.9. Yep.
Yeah. So they're going to charge a little bit more, but that also includes chargeback protection. So for those who haven't experienced it yet,
and tax remittance too.
Right, that's huge. So they're going to be collecting and remitting taxes. They're going to represent you in case of a chargeback, which is huge. So what a chargeback, for those that haven't experienced, is when a guest basically says that the charge was fraudulent, or they go to their credit card company and say, hey, like, the house wasn't clean, I don't want to pay for this, or something like that. And now you're in a fight between the credit card company and Stripe's involved, and you're in there. I've never actually had to do it, but I hear it's an absolute nightmare. And at least 50% of the time, you end up not getting paid for the booking, even though they were there the full time.
Yeah.
So chargeback protection is fantastic.
Yeah. And on the tax remittance side, from Hospitable's standpoint, I think when I was looking at their little slide deck, right? I mean, they do tax remittance in pretty much every state except for a handful. It was like California, Nevada, Alaska, Missouri, and Louisiana. So I think there was 5 total states that they are not able to do the tax remittance. So, I mean, obviously, if you're in one of those states, you're going to have to manually handle that. But for the other majority of states, that's going to be handled through Hospitable.
Right. And this is how I'm using. So I'm already using Hospitable as the merchant of record for my direct bookings. Mm-hmm. So I really like that because they remit the taxes, they do the chargeback protection, and I sync all the accounts for my different LLCs to Hospitable, and they're pushing payouts to each of those accounts. So very seamless. So as we bring on co-host clients or additional properties, really easy. We just connect that account and we're good to go. So I am absolutely loving that. And I really enjoy not having to have multiple Stripe accounts. So that's cool.
At the end of the day, we have to remember that this is a new integration. And with new integrations do come hiccups. So Hospitable does have a pilot program going on now. Luke and myself aren't a part of that pilot program, but I would fully anticipate there even post the pilot program, and there still being some hiccups, right? So we're not telling everybody that this is going to be 100% perfect from day one, but I do appreciate that Hospitable does do this pilot program for a while to try to work out some of these kinks before they start pushing this to the rest of us as users.
Yeah, absolutely. So just going through the list here, look at some other things that are going to be great. We should be able to update listing content straight from Hospitable, changing our photos, amenities, descriptions. That's one of the things I really liked about OwnerRez is if I want to change my hero image, I could go in and basically just drag it around in different directions on OwnerRez, and it would update automatically to Airbnb and VRBO. So I think that's going to be huge, really streamlining that.
Yeah, I think one other call out too was just kind of talking about before this integration versus after. So before, the guest books on VRBO, the payment, the handle of taxes, the 8% fee to us, that's all coming from VRBO, right? On a VRBO, if it was $1,000 booking, you're getting $920, right? So what's changing now is the guest still doing everything through VRBO, right? So there's no changes to the guest, but Hospitable, again, is the one collecting that payment, providing the chargeback protection, the tax remittance, because they're the merchant of record. Then VRBO is charging you 5% on your card. So you do have to have your card on file. They are going to charge that 5% to your card for each booking. And then Hospitable pays you out the remainder minus that 3.9%. So the difference here is on $1,000 booking with this new integration, you're going to get $911, where before you were getting $920. Again, that's that 0.9% difference. So, if I were you and before this happens, go in and look at look at the rates that you have, your rate increases in Hospitable and put that maybe to that 8.9% total.
Yeah. And it looks like they're going to have seamless upsells also. So we should be able to do one-click late checkouts, early check-ins, things like that. So that should be pretty cool. I like that. And I think the thing that really sold me on maybe getting back on VRBO, and in fact, I'm sold. I'm at least going to do it with one listing just to test this out and report back. But they can automatically create listings now. So I could push a listing from Hospitable, so one that already exists that Hospitable knows, it has all my information, push it straight to VRBO and go live. So it should just be a few clicks to actually get set up. I am all in.
Yeah, no, that's huge, especially if you're scaling, right, as well, or revamping anything. I think that's going to be a big part, but scaling for sure for, I don't want to say multi-platform because we're all multi-platform for the most part, but multi-owners, that have several properties or putting on properties. That's huge.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that pretty much covers it. We will report back. Absolutely. Like we'll have to do like a VRBO integration follow-up episode. It'll probably be pretty quick, but I'm going to do this once it comes live here the next few weeks, and I will report back exactly what happens. And Tyler, I'm sure since you're already on VRBO, you're going to go ahead and stay that way and set up the integration, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you joining us for this quick episode. We will report back as soon as we have some results for you, and we will catch you on the next one. As always, we'd appreciate a 5-star review and a follow. We are on Instagram at the Peak Season Podcast, and take care, everybody.